Hello, everyone. We are going to be looking today. Today is, by the way, February 23rd, 2020, and we're looking at Luke 14, verses 1 through 6. So I'll read it to you. One Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in the home of a leader of the Pharisees, and the people were watching him closely. There was a man whose arms and legs were swollen. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law, "Is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not?" When they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. Then he turned to them and said, "Which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out?" And they could not answer. So, this is an interesting scripture for a lot of reasons. First of all, it really does feel like Jesus has got the lightsaber out and he is just swinging at them. And he is circling back again on healing on the Sabbath. So this has got to be like, I don't know what, the fourth time or more that he has tackled this topic. And it's interesting to me because it makes me wonder if this really brings to a head some of the underlying issues that Jesus has with the Pharisees about, well, we'll dive into it a little more. First thing I want to kind of reflect on is in verse 1, where it says, "The people were watching him closely." So here he is having dinner at the home of basically, I'm going to call them an enemy. I don't know how to describe their relationship and if that's appropriate or not, but that's the way it strikes me. And people are watching him closely. So I think if that were me in my situation, I would feel very nervous, uncomfortable, uncertain, kind of on edge. But again, I don't think Jesus sees this as a snake. I think he sees it as a rope. And again, I think he sees it as a useful rope. It's not just that it's not threatening, it's actually a useful situation to him. And he is ready to step right into it on purpose. So, then it mentions that there was a man whose arms and legs were swollen. I think this is interesting that he brings this up too, because, okay, it reminds me a little bit of the woman who was bent over, and he compares her to letting your ox or your donkey go who was tied up, that you will unbondage your ox and your donkey to let them go to water, but you won't let this woman be unbondaged. And I wonder if there's some analogy here between his legs and arms being swollen. I mean, I'm wondering if he was even able to use them properly, and the comparison of being in a pit, because in a pit you also wouldn't be able to use your arms and legs properly. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then it says, when they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. And I think this is it's a good reflection on when we have a situation in our life that's hard for us to see, and it's hard for us to basically answer like they were answering Jesus. Even if you can answer, like in your mind, it's very hard to move yourself forward because this is your stuck area. And then I like it that he does this with a question. Is it permitted to heal on the Sabbath day or not? That before he does it this time, he asks the question. So he's trying to provoke their thought. And it's actually a question he's already answered just a couple of sections ago. And so I wondered, what is Jesus trying to teach them in this situation? And I feel like he's trying to teach them One thing is you sit in judgment for things that you're guilty of. And another thing is that you care more about, we'll say, being righteous, keeping the law that they've created it, which I think translates into your own image, this law keeping, than you care about other people. And he's showing how their nature is so very different from God and how they've closed God out. So I want to go down a little bit farther to the end. It says, again, they could not answer. And I feel like the things that he wants us to work on are the ones that it's just we're either completely unaware of them, or we're aware, but I just think about the places I've been stuck in my own life and how hard it is to, at one point early on, before you've really started your internal journey, it's hard to even, like we've talked about pride. Well, how do you, if you know you have a problem with pride, but you don't have any internal practices in place, how do you tackle that? And even after you start to get some spiritual practices in place, it's still really hard to tackle these things. I'll give you an example of something that happened to me yesterday and today. So I have a situation where I was frustrated with someone, and I felt like they were not treating someone else respectfully. So this morning I spent some time doing my work around that, my prayer process. Part of my prayer process includes doing some of the work of Byron Katie, and she has some really good questions that you can ask yourself when you're having a stressful situation, or a situation where you're frustrated with someone. So one of the first beliefs that I questioned is the belief that this person is mad at me. And then I asked myself, well, how do I feel and act when I believe this person is mad at me? And this is where some of my answers: I feel distanced, I feel judgmental towards them, disdaining, dissatisfied with them, condescending towards them. And then I asked the next question: how would I feel and how would I be if I didn't believe that this person was mad at me? And I think I would be loving and compassionate and sympathetic and warm and kind and concerned. And like, who doesn't want to be with the second person rather than the first person? Like, that's pretty gross. And then I tried her turnarounds of her work. So I turned around the statement, this person is mad at me. And one of the turnarounds that was very powerful for me is, I am mad at this person. And I was able to identify things where I could see that was true also. And then the second belief that I questioned was the belief that this person is being insensitive to someone else. And when I hold that belief, then in my mind I feel judgmental. Again, some of these overlap, obviously. Insensitive. I feel mean and unaccepting. Again, condescending. Pretending to accept to some degree, and thus hypocritical. And if I didn't hold that belief that they were being insensitive to someone else, I would feel loving, supportive, open, kind, thoughtful, attentive. And so in turning that around, one of the turnarounds that was really powerful for me is that to turn it around from this person is being insensitive to this person is being sensitive, and finding evidence, looking for and finding evidence that that belief is also true or more true. And then the other turnaround that was very powerful for me is this turnaround of, I am being insensitive to this person, and also very clearly able to find evidence for that. So it's interesting that even with this, knowing all of this and even reading the scripture, that I still find it very hard. Even cognitively, I can start to see those things, but to really release being that person to Jesus, for him to heal me. Um, and and then even changing my lens a little bit to, instead of looking at the situation as annoying and difficult and time consuming, um, to look at the situation as joy, because this is where Jesus wants my healing. This was a gift that he brought me, this situation, that I could look at my internal heart again for the how manyth time. Um, and I felt like when Jesus asked the Pharisees, is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day? But his question for me might be, is it permitted to disdain people? And so, no, of course not. And so just to readjust my lens to a lens of praise and thankfulness that had and am in this situation, that I can re-examine my own heart and let Jesus in and become more like him, and let go of the old junk that's really making my life worse and more painful. And so I'm just so thankful for that. And I praise you, Jesus.